In terms of women's football and WSL, I mean, what an end to the season we've got with Chelsea and Manchester City. How much do you think Chelsea's League Cup defeat might affect them going forward with what was going to be a quadruple to win? Could flip on its head, be nothing left to win.
Yeah, and that's the reality, and that's elite football on a knife edge. Finals are one-off games. Arsenal, in the League Cup final, dominated the game. Oh, I say dominated the game. They came out on top and deserved winners. It's always a big blow when Chelsea never win, because you expect them to win because they're so good. I think it's interesting the timing of that game when went straight into a women's international break. So I think it's probably a good opportunity for Emma Hayes and staff to reflect and then really kind of crank the gears up, ready for the run-in, which obviously includes a Champions League semi-final against Barcelona, which will be a very, very difficult task.
Well, you mentioned a difficult task. I mean, Barcelona are their nemesis team in the Champions League, and it's one I guess Emma really wants to put to bed.
That is the one, and she's absolutely right she's been vocal about saying that she won't be defined at her I think it's 12 years at Chelsea, won't be defined by whether she wins or doesn't win the Champions League. Of course, as an elite manager with a mind.
Is she right saying that?
I absolutely. I think that everybody on the outside will say that's the missing one for her, and of course it is. And if you asked her, do you want to win the Champions League? Of course the answer is going to be yes, of course. However, I do think that the challenge and the reality of the competition is extremely difficult, and it's all about the progress, and the progress that she's made at Chelsea Football Club has just been incredible, and that will be her legacy at the end of it. It won't be whether she does or doesn't win the Champions League this season.
But you mentioned that being her legacy, but if she keeps getting them as far as a semi-final or a final but doesn't get that one step further in winning it, it will be an itch she won't be able to scratch.
Well, you say that as well, but if you compare it to the men's Champions League, you look at Manchester City, for example, won it last year. They're going into it defending, this season. They've got a massive game against Real Madrid next week, which, they could lose over 2 legs to Real Madrid. There's a chance Chelsea could lose to Barcelona over 2 legs. That is the beauty and the nature of the Champions League. It always takes years and years of failure, of being knocked out even in the group stages, the quarterfinals, the semi-finals, in order for you to have that taste to get into a semi-final with way more experience than you've had in previous years. So are Chelsea better equipped going into this Barcelona game over 2 legs? Absolutely. They've got all the experiences of failures in the Champions League. They played in a final against Barcelona, so they've had that exposure. But this again, it's 2 games. It's 2 extremely difficult games, and on the day, over the 2 legs, it's going to come down to tactics, and it's the most difficult team to play, of course. But if Chelsea get over this hurdle, I would back them to win it.
In terms of Emma moving on, were you surprised it was to the American national job and not into men's football?
Well, extremely interesting question. Knowing what Emma has done in the women's game is pioneering in terms of not just the football and the way that she sets teams up. It's what she's done around the wider game, real honed in on female health and understanding how the female athlete works, not just a footballer. And that's really helped her, kind of move away from other clubs and managers. I know that the US women's national team job, everybody knows the history of women's soccer, as they call it in the States, how big they are as a team, as a nation. That is the biggest job in women's football, without a doubt.
Does it feel like she's staying within her comfort zone rather than going and becoming the first female coach properly, especially in this country, to go and crack it in men's football?
If you're asking, I do think Emma Hayes could compete in the men's game. As in, I think she could manage a team, absolutely.
High up the pyramid?
How high
up the pyramid?
I don't know. That's a very difficult question to answer, and obviously, it's sort of a drop in the ocean as to where she'd fit. But it comes down to a football club at the end of the day. I don't think she's staying within her comfort zone at all. I know that she's got an incredible kind of elite mindset going into that US national team job at a time when they're not actually World Cup champions, which is different for them. The opportunity to then push them back onto that perch, I'm sure, will excite her a lot.
Final question. England goes to the Euros this summer as favourites, or among the favourites to win it, and great squad. Do you think the missing piece of the jigsaw could be asking somebody who's won a Euros recently to come and maybe give a team talk beforehand. I'm asking whether you think Serena Wiegmann should go and give the boys a chat.
Well, Serena's knowledge and depth of understanding of the game, goes very, very deep. You can see that in the way that she's progressed the England women's squad over the last few years. I'm not sure whether that would be, I don't think there'd be any problems in her doing that. But
I mean, she's an England manager, Gareth's an England manager. It's the same sport.
It's, of course, yeah, and I'm sure that there might be words of wisdom passed between the two managers. Whether Serena Wiegmann goes and addresses the men's team, I don't know. Whether that would be appropriate. Gareth Southgate normally gets things spot on in terms of, the culture and the ethos within the England team. So I'm sure that they will have had or will have dialogue between the two managers, sharing ideas, The way that the FA has risen, in the last 5 years has been remarkable in terms of we are looking at two incredibly competitive teams in both the men's and the women's team on a global stage that are both looking to go into every single tournament they play in now and be winners, and that says a lot about how incredible English football has come in the last few years.